Hey everyone, a few weeks ago, I did something I said I'd never do, and it broke what I've long thought of as one of my go to financial rules of thumb. I'll talk about the specifics of it in just a moment, but it brought into focus that these rules of thumb that maybe we've held on to since early adulthood or even earlier than that should always be questioned. Never ignored completely, certainly, but questioned. There's usually a good reason a rule of thumb exists, but conditions change and your personal situation changes, and sometimes following these financial rules of thumb have a very high cost. So here's what happened to me. For the past couple of years, my family has spent quite a bit of time on the road. My wife, Karen, manages several Airbnbs that we own in a town about 6 hours from us. And so once a month, we'd pile in her little sedan with our two girls and make that drive. Now, as you can tell by looking at me, I'm not a little guy. I'm 6'4", and that means that the front seat would be moved all the way back, and this didn't leave hardly any room for the person sitting behind me in the back seat, typically my 13-year-old Hannah. Eventually, we figured out that for everyone's sanity, we were going to have to get another vehicle, something a little bigger. My wife was opposed to something really big, like a Suburban, and so we eventually decided to go with a midsize SUV, and that led us to figure out that a Honda Pilot was just right for our needs. So I started looking. Now, this was at the height of the pandemic-induced car shortage, and let me tell you, I was shocked. I knew cars would be high, but I had no idea how much cars had gone up, especially used cars. After I looked around for a while, I figured out that a new Honda Pilot would be about the same price, if not cheaper, than one that was used. But I'll admit, I struggled with this. I've always told my kids, don't ever buy a new car. You know, you've heard this before. You drive it off the lot and you lose 20%. From the standpoint of a return on investment, a new car had just never made sense to me. But as we continued to look, it started to become apparent that buying a new car was going to be a smarter decision than buying a used car. And so that's what we did. And now the drive back and forth is much more comfortable. But all of this did make me start to think about some of the other financial rules of thumb that I know some people are sticking to because that's what they were taught, and so that's what they've always believed. But there are a few of these rules that you need to question before you blindly follow them. Now, I certainly won't cover all of the rules of thumb that need a second look, but I do want to cover the three that I've been hearing a lot lately. And the first is bonds should equal your age. This rule of thumb says that the percentage of your portfolio in bonds should equal your age. So, for example, if you're 65, you should have 65% of your portfolio in bonds. Now, I know you may be thinking, well, that's ridiculous, but let me tell you, I still meet people fairly often who are adhering to that rule. Now, it's been around for decades, and it was birthed in an era when bond yields were much higher, and so you don't hear about it as much now, and it's a good thing because this rule needs to be trashed, not just questioned. The amount of bonds you hold in your portfolio should only be determined by your risk tolerance. Historically, stocks will be more volatile than bonds. Now, with this recent bout of inflation we've had, along with the interest rate increases, that's put us into a period where both stocks and bonds are down. So just assuming that bonds equal safe investments and stock equal risky investments doesn't hold water now. The truth is, both bonds and stocks have risk, and before you decide how to allocate your portfolio, you need to understand those risks. The second rule of thumb that I hate seeing is delay Social Security until you're 70. I still see this all the time in the dozens of news articles about Social Security that's published every day. This is one of those rules that can be right, but certainly isn't always. In my video, 5 Smart Reasons to File for Social Security at 62, I lay out 5 clear-cut reasons when filing early is the better move than filing later. So the broad rule of everyone should wait as long as possible just isn't accurate. And in addition to the 5 reasons I mentioned in the video, there are lots of other reasons that someone should file earlier than the latest age possible. Some of this is about making a retirement plan tax efficient. It may not make sense to front load your retirement income with distributions from your retirement accounts while you're waiting to file for Social Security. The quick version of it is this. It's different for everyone. There are no rules of thumb that should be blindly followed when it comes to Social Security. And then we have the one that's picked up a lot of steam in the last few years, and that is the 4% withdrawal rule. According to this rule, you should never take out more than 4% of your portfolio value to live on. The basis of this rule is solid. It's based in studies that show if you take out 4% of your portfolio and adjust that for inflation, your money should last throughout your retirement. Now, my personal thought is that this rule is not flexible enough and it minimizes the importance of some of the critical pieces of the retirement income puzzle, like deciding the sequence of retirement distributions. If you have a 401k, a non-retirement account, or a Roth, what order do you access those accounts for withdrawals? At what point does Social Security fit into the picture? Those things make a big difference in the taxes you pay in retirement, and they have a lot to do with how long your money lasts. Now, I won't go into depth here, but I just published a video where I covered a lot of the popular retirement withdrawal rules in more depth. And if you want to see more about why I don't stick exclusively to the 4% rule and instead like to use a tailored approach, go check out this video. In addition to the 4% rule, I talk about the dynamic spending approach and the retirement bucket method as well. So you can just click right here to see that video, and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.